What's coming up for you? I can see that you have some thoughts percolating. What's coming up for you?
I think it's really, really difficult. I'm not denying that it's very, very difficult. And if you're in a situation where you can't go out, or there are situations which are very, very difficult. I'm not denying that, and I'm not trying to be glib, but I think the subtitle of our book is Support, Direction, and Space. And there's a very, very fine line between something which is supportive and something which is imprisoning. Okay. So, like, in yoga, if you go along to any yoga class or anything, probably somebody will talk to you about a yoga block. It's a block. It's a thing you sit on. Okay. So a block is a thing you sit on, but a block is also a blockage, something which blocks. Now, the anything can be experienced as either a support or a prison. We have incarnated. We have human bodies. We have human bodies which are finite and which change and which sometimes give us problems. But at the same time, these bodies that we have give us the freedom to see, hear, exist, walk around. They are our vehicles for experiencing the world. So we can both experience our bodies as a prison, which is inevitably crumbling, or a support for perceiving the world. I mean, without our bodies, we ain't going to be doing much perceiving.
Hmm.
And sometimes I think about, like, there are forms of poetry, for example. Haiku, the Japanese form of poetry, which is, a certain number of syllables and 3 lines, or sonnets, which have 14 lines, 12 lines and then a couplet at the end. Now, these are forms which are prescribed. If you're going to write a haiku poem, or if you're going to write a sonnet, you have to do it in this way. So in some ways, it's a prison. It says if you're going to do this, you have to do, these are the boundaries, these are the
Is that the
limitations.
direction? Are we related to direction? Okay.
Right. But if you instead of experiencing the boundaries
Mm.
as prisons, you experience them as supports, then it clarifies a direction. A support clarifies a direction, because basically a support is something we can lean on, trust in, and use to propel us in a direction.
Hmm.
So I think that's a really great formulation. How can we take support? How can we understand the limitations that are imposed, instead of as prisons, but as a support? And in what direction are they taking us? And then there is basically, if something is very fixed and stable, it's a support. If it takes us in a direction, it opens a direction. And then basically, if you go in a direction, there's a space that opens up between the support and the direction. The word for suffering in Sanskrit and in the Yoga Sutra is dukkha. Dukkha. Ka, Kha. Ka is suffering. Sorry, is space. Sorry, ka is space.
Mm.
Du is restricted space.
Mm.
Dukkha means a restricted space. It's an emotional, and the frustration that comes from being in a restricted space. The journey of yoga is very simple. It's the journey from dukkha to sukha. Sukha means a good and open space, a space where you can breathe, a space where you can be free. So the journey from dukkha to sukha, by taking support on even the things that limit you. I can say a little bit more about what taking support means, but by taking support on even the things that limit you, and transforming what is initially a prison into something which allows you to go in a direction, opens up, has the potential to open up a space. And it's that space which is what we're trying, which is what we're opening, Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Said
yeah.
that very well.
Yeah, I like it. I like the idea of, I mean, when you're saying, and you know, as you started off in the middle part of the segment, is that it's very practical. So I can look at, in the United States, we drive cars all around to our jobs. We go back and forth, and then we haul our kids back and forth to preschool. Our whole day is spent time in cars. And
Mm,
one of the things being confined at our homes is that I've talked to a lot of families who are like, I don't have to drive anymore. I have, like, I just save like an hour and a half out of my life or more, hour and a half to 2 hours of my life, and I'm spending more time with my kids. So that's
mm.
an example, I think, of, I feel like,
Taking
yeah, getting space through having that structure and direction as an example of that. Um, so I
for
do
sure.
think, yeah, I think it's kind of we don't see it like that because we are used to, as you said before, habits. Our habits are that we used to do it this way, and we're used to our habitual ways of doing, but we're given kind of support to see and feel and act differently. So,
Well, there's a really interesting idea that we too easily equate freedom with the freedom to do anything we like. And if anybody takes away the our freedom to do anything we like, we can experience this as a somehow as an imposition, or a kind of like we can get indignant or outraged. But actually, we are not free to do whatever we like. We have to live with the consequences of what we do. And freedom is not to do with being able to do what we like. Freedom, actually, I think, is much more about living in tune with reality.
mm,
Living in tune with reality will give you much more freedom, even if that might appear to be more limited, than having all the. We know that the wealthiest people in the world, who have the financial resources to do whatever they like, are not necessarily free. I mean, not necessarily free. They're not free. Yeah, they're not free. They're trapped. Freedom is not in. Actually, another interesting thing, which I quite often say with some of my students, I used to work in adult psychiatry. I used to be working the psychiatric services here, and one of the most common places where people have anxiety attacks is in supermarkets,
wow,
and which is interesting, isn't it? And
yeah.
what's the thing about supermarkets? One of the things that people have anxiety attacks about is the freedom of choice. If you have 25 different types of baked bean, or whatever it is, different, you're just overwhelmed with, oh shit, should I have this or should I have that, or I'm going to make the wrong choice. You have this illusion of freedom by having all these different choices, but it's not an actual freedom. It's the tyranny of choice. Having a blank piece of paper and then being told to paint a picture can be terrifying. You could go anywhere. Actually having some, okay, draw a line here, draw a line here, do this, and somehow the boundaries of being told. I mean, I'm not advocating being told what to do all the time, but I'm advocating the idea that accepting boundaries and accepting that we can't do everything and that there are limitations can be experienced as actually the route to freedom,
Mm.
and not as contrary to freedom.
Yeah, I would say that, and as you were saying that, I was mapping it to any type of creative project. Whenever I have like if I've ever had the luxury of having a creative project with no end date, no budget. I mean, it's kind of like it's almost actually harder to do it versus saying like it has to be for this target audience, it has to ship out on this day, it has to actually say these three things.
Yeah.
Those kind of restraints are like, oh, now how am I going to creatively solve this? There's something about,
So those
uh,
are the supports. Those
yeah,
are exactly the supports
yeah,
that they clarify direction.
yeah, Yeah, and
And
if and there's with that support, you feel like there's more creativity that you can have within it. Because otherwise, if it's too open, you feel like I don't know where I'm going to go. It's a
completely,
problem. This has
completely.
been wonderful. We have been talking to Ranju Roy, who is a co-author along with David Charlton with in the book Embodying the Yoga Sutra, and we were talking about support, direction, and space, which is the subtitle of his book. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure, pleasure, CJ.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.